The Nikon D500 can still hold its own as one of the best sports and wildlife camera bodies out there. Today, let's take a look at how I have the autofocus set up on mine. Don't have a D500? No problem. The principles apply to virtually any camera. I bought the Nikon D500 to use primarily for photographing wildlife, and I haven't been disappointed. The camera performs beautifully. But one of the best things about modern DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is how flexible they are. You can customize the camera to work the way you want it to. And what better way to take advantage of this than by setting up the autofocus in a way that makes sense to you. I'm going to go over the changes I've made to my D500 that work best for me. But this by no means is the only way to do it, or even the right way to do it. It's simply what works for me. Think about your style of shooting and experiment until you find what works for you. First, let's just get our bearings here and quickly run through some of the controls and options on the D500. On the front of the body, next to the lens mount, you'll find a switch to select autofocus or manual focus. In the center of that switch is a push button. Holding in that button allows you to select your autofocus mode and area. Use the rear dial to select the mode, either continuous AFC or single AFS. Turning the front dial cycles through all of the various focus areas you can use. Single point, dynamic 25, 72, or 153 point, 3D tracking, group, and auto, where the camera decides which element in the frame to focus on. I don't really use that one. Now for some customization. The first change I made was to decouple the autofocus system from the shutter button and set up back button focus. Stay tuned to the end for a link that goes more in depth on back button focus. But basically what this means is that half pressing the shutter button does not activate autofocus. Instead, I press the AF on button on the back of the camera with my thumb to focus. One of the biggest advantages to this is that I can leave the camera in continuous autofocus all the time, but by holding or pressing and releasing the button, I can make it operate like AFC or AFS. It's one less thing I have to think about when I'm out in the field. Next, we have to decide on a focus area. Most of the time, I use single point. It's very accurate, it's predictable, and it's nice and simple. It doesn't clutter up the viewfinder. I use the joystick on the back of the camera to move the focus point around the viewfinder. Then, just shift my thumb up to the AF on button to acquire focus. This works great in most situations, but when the action speeds up, it can be really tough to keep that single AF point on your subject, particularly for birds in flight. In those situations, I like to use group autofocus, as it's a little more forgiving and I can cover a fast-moving target much easier. The problem is, when a bird lights from its roost and takes flight, there's no time to hold the focus mode button and rotate the dial through the various selections before taking the shot. That's where this little joystick really shines. You see, it's not just a directional control to move the focus point up, down, left, and right. It's also a customizable push button. That means you can tell the camera what you want it to do when you press it. In your menu, go to the Custom Setting menu, then select F for controls. Choose F1 for custom control assignment and scroll down to Sub-Selector Center. The diagram of the camera body will highlight the selected button in yellow. Press the multi-selector to change the function. Choose AF area mode plus AF on. Simply select the AF area mode you want to assign to the joystick and you're done. I chose group area AF, but you pick whichever area mode you think will be most useful. With this setup, I can use the AF on button to activate single point autofocus for stationary or slow-moving subjects, but when the action speeds up, all I have to do is move my thumb down and use the joystick, and I'm in a more effective area mode for fast-moving subjects. I don't even have to take my eye off the viewfinder. As promised, here's a link to my video on back button focus. If you found this helpful or entertaining, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more. Now, pick your favorite focus mode and go take pictures and have fun doing it.